Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 21st century. You have completed the first quarter of this century, and we believe that you have an idea of how this one will differ from the one before. Yes, the 20th century was a lot of fun, especially the second half, and we are glad some of you got to party along to Led Zeppelin and get shit-faced on drugs, but the party is over, I'm afraid. One of the things we have had to do is really curb the quality of the music because you lot were just getting too excited. Anyway, we at YouTube have provided this AI information transmitter known to you as Andy Edwards. We know you have been taken in by his apparent hatred of all modern music, but he seems to keep you happy with his inane ranting and discussion of old, irrelevant progressive rock bands. So today, he will be telling you about the best music from 2005 and 2025. And hopefully this will keep you happy in the knowledge that someone out there is telling it like it is, whilst we carry on working out ways to take your livelihood and freedom away from you. Thanks for listening, consumer.
Hello and welcome to this video. And I'm sorry I started off with that sort of very jerky talking. I didn't think it had started up properly, but it had. So that's what happened. But with no going back now, I've started, so I will finish, as the great Magnus Magnusson used to say. So, the reference that most of them are not going to get. Oh, this is not going well. And the reason it's not going well is because I've been sat here doing these all day. I've done all these on the same day. I've done 5 videos. This is the 5th video. I have looked at what I call the birthday album. So you take a year, you go back 60 years to 1965, that's 60 years ago, and you go, what are the best albums? And then you celebrate those albums because this year they will be celebrating their 60th birthdays. They're like they're little people. Then we do it for 1975, then we do it for 1985, then we do it for 1995. And now, on this video, I'm going to be doing it for 2005 and 2015. So we're going to be looking at albums that are 20 years old and albums that are only 10 years old. But you're going to say, why haven't you done these on 2 separate videos like the rest? And I tell you why, it's because on the other ones, I've come up with 10 albums that I like. For 2005, I could only come up with 7 albums that I could honestly say, I like those albums, I listen to those albums, they're good albums. There was just nothing there. And even there, I'm scraping the barrel, to be honest. When it comes to 2015, there are only 2 albums that have impinged themselves on my consciousness as a musician. Now, I put the failing of this down to me. I'm not saying music's got so bad and there's no good albums coming out in these years, but it's interesting to explore what's actually going on. And it's interesting to explore what I've learned looking at the albums that have come out at this regular point, you know, every 10 years from 1965 on, and see if I've learned anything or gleaned anything from this exercise. I have a bit of coffee. Got a Greg's coffee here. I'll give him the advertising. They never bloody help though. They're only up the road. You think with that amount of advertising I've done for Greg's. Okay, right. Let's have a go, shall we? We've got some strange light going on in this video. So I filmed the first 4. Then I went and got myself Big Greg's coffee. I've come back and I've had to change position, and it's very odd. And when we first started up, there was like here, there was a nice little sort of abstract shape, wasn't there? But that's gone now, and now my face is lit up more. And the reason is because time is passing, the sun is revolving around the earth, and all this stuff's going on while we're whittering on about all this nonsense from the past. You know, and we should be thinking to the future, which is ironic when you look at what's written on my hat at the moment. So what we have here is the summation of all the esoteric aspects that have been contained within the videos that I've done over the past 4 days. Because there's always an esoteric aspect to everything, and that's what you're going to get on here, on this. Now, if I could time this right, and I don't know if I don't, then this might come out on a Saturday and Sunday, and I could call this a Philosophy Saturday or Philosophy Sunday. I mean, I could do, but I might not do. I don't know, because I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Nobody does. But we look to the past to maybe work out what's going to happen in the future. And if we want to know what's going to happen creatively, maybe we can glean something from this. But what do we glean? Anyway, shall we just get in? So I'm going to go through my 7 favourite albums from 2005. So these are 20 years old. Can't believe it. One of the things that's really interesting as I've done this is I wasn't born in 1965. I was 7 years old in 1975, so I got no memory of any of the albums I discussed. I just discovered those in hindsight. But once I get to 1985, suddenly these albums are starting to impinge in my experience of what I was doing. I was 17 in 1985. In 1995, I was 27, and I'm an adult. I'm doing music. I'm trying to get a career, and those albums reflect that. Now, in 2005, one of the problems we've got here is now, by 2005, I'd played with Robert Plant, I'd toured the world, had a proper career doing music. I was touring with a guy called Ian Parker doing that. And I was also, and I was just about to stop this, but it was in the realm where I was still doing music production, making dance records, making hip hop records, rap records, and also working with arts organisations to do that sort of music production with young people, usually in urban areas. So we're talking hip hop and rap again. And when I went through all the albums, I went, oh yeah, I had that album, but I didn't necessarily have that album because I liked it. It's because I was listening to the production on there. There was one album that I nearly put on the list, but I thought I'd be cheating. It was an album by A. Marie, who did the hit single One Thing, which I think is sort of my favourite pop single from the noughties, right? And I did get the album, but the album wasn't as good as that one single, so I decided not to put it on. But these are the albums that I was listening to at that time, or that have become very important to me since that time. 2005 was a very important year for me. I'd been in the doldrums after leaving Robert Plant's band in 2001. So I'd done stuff. I joined Ian Parker, gone on tour with him, and I'd stopped doing his thing. And then I decided to get my act together. And I managed to get my act together using some methods that was sort of a mixture of sort of business practice and NLP. And it was something I would love to explore on how those ideas that I developed back then, 20 years ago, helped me. So in 2005, I joined IQ. I started doing some serious drum clinics for Tama. I played at the UK's Drum Fest alongside Terry Bozzio and Jimmy Chamberlain and all these guys, and began work on a number of albums that would end up with following year me doing Frost and sort of doing the thing that I became known for. And so that's what 2005 is to me. And I think it's let's just go through the story of this. So at number 7, because there's not 10 here, at number 7, I've got Visions of an Inner Mounting Apocalypse. Now, this was one of those albums that was very popular towards the beginning of the 2000s, where you pick a band like Van Halen, and then you get a house band together, usually with Vinnie Colaiuta on drums, and then you get a whole bunch of guitar players or whatever, and they all come in, they all do a tribute to it, and you get so-and-so doing a tribute. And they did this with the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and it was this album called Visions of an Inner Mountain Apocalypse, and it had Vinnie Colaiuta on drums, it had Kayak on bass, that playing with John McLaughlin back in the original acoustic trio with Try Like Gertie. Who else is on there? There was another guitarist that I can't remember. He'd put the project together and was sort of producing it. On violin, they managed on a couple of tracks to secure Jerry Goodman. So it was that was serious, that is. Then you got a whole bunch of guitarists from Mike Stern to John Abercrombie to Frank Gambale. Who else was on there? Greg Howe. And they all do their take on the Mahavishnu Orchestra. Now, one of the things that's interesting about this album, but which fundamentally spoils it for me, is that they take the Mahavishnu arrangements and then they change them. They change them drastically, and sometimes you get 2 Mahavishnu tracks put together. And sometimes in doing this, they sort of kill the magic of what the Mahavishnu track is, especially when it comes to modulations. John McLaughlin was pursuing a sort of modal free jazz opposed to guitar. And all these jazz types, they want some changes to play over, so they keep putting in changes. But having said that, it's a good album. It's interesting. It's no replacement for the Mavish Orchestra, but I did listen to it loads, and especially when I was out doing my clinics. I did a clinic tour of the UK with Kenny Aranoff, and I can remember when I did that, that was the album that was in my CD Walkman at the time, and I was listening to it all the time, mainly because it got Vinnie Colaiuta, and mainly because it was a Mavish Orchestra. I think my favourite moment on there is actually John Abercrombie, who I've never been a massive fan of, but he's a great guitar player. I shouldn't knock him, but he does a version of Follow Your Heart, I think. I think that's the one he does, and that's pretty good. Because he pulls it all down, he explores another aspect. Everyone else is going for the high power thing all the time. It's interesting to hear people like Mike Stern, negotiating sort of Mavish new stuff, and you realise they can. Because all these guitarists did grow up listening to the Mavish Orchestra, and they've had to contend with it. We've all had to contend with it. Anyway, that's what I've got number 7 on my albums from 2005. And number 6, I've got Question Mark by Neil Morse. Now, I didn't buy this album in 2005. I actually bought it in 2006, the following year. And the reason I bought it, because I got the gig with IQ. And I thought, let's have a bit, and I did a bit of sort of research, and I thought, well, Neil Morse sounds good. I'll go and buy one of his albums. They got Mike Portnoy on drums, and I bought this album, and then when I got it, it was great. It's a proper prog album. It's that American prog, so it's really, really competent. All the vocal harmonies are really good. This is what you get from American prog. I have good vocal harmonies. And it's really fiery, great bands. It's got a touch of jazz fusion about it. It's grooving, it's a really, really good, solid prog album. And Neil Morse is an absolute brilliant. And he's one of the guys that I've heard has lost his house in these fires. So I know Neil's not watching this. He's probably worried about getting somewhere to live. But I'm sending, and he's a religious man, so I say a little prayer now. I say a little prayer for Neil Morse. I hope everything goes all right for you, and I do this genuinely without any sort of sarcasm or humor. Neil, I hope you're doing well. I did tour Spocksbeard, but Neil wasn't in it. I've always thought Neil is like one of the sort of geniuses of modern progressive rock, and this is a great album. He is a Christian, and it does seem to be about some sort of religious Christian tribal. So I don't know what it's about. I don't know what it's about. I never got into that. Some albums I get the concept. This one I haven't got a clue. The Question Mark really does represent what I know about this album conceptually. But it's a good, solid, progressive rock album from 2005, and there weren't that many around at that time. But the great genius Neil Morse, who I haven't said much about on this channel, but I acknowledge it. He is one of those prog geniuses that have been around for the last 30 years that we must acknowledge. Now, at number 5, I have put an album on this list, and I thought, should I put it? Because all I've ever done is knock the album. It's Francis the Mute. That's the album. Now, what I'm going to do here, look, I'll tell you what, this is the only way to explain it. You stay there, you lot. I'm moving. I'll tell you what I've got over here. Right on the table over here, look. I'll go and grab it. The Mars Volta. Francis the Mute. I've got a copy of it here. Do you know why? I'm about to reevaluate it. Right? And to give it the benefit of the doubt, because they were so thin on the ground of albums that I thought were pretty good from 2005. And this one's that I remember getting this one when it came out, and everyone says, you like the Mavish Orchestra, you like King Crimson, you'll love this album. And I went and got it. And I didn't like it. And I should like it. Look at it. I mean, look at the cover. This is what I should like. Opening track, Cygnus, Vismon, Cygnus, 4 parts, including sarcophagi, umbilical syllables. I mean, look at it. Look at it. I should like this album. The artwork's all brilliant. I didn't like the production on it. I'm not keen on all this sort of computerized. And this is when it was starting to happen, you see. Now, it probably doesn't sound anywhere near as bad as the sort of quantized hell that we have to go through now. I am going to reevaluate it, and I've put the risk, and I've put it on this list, and I will come back once I've listened to it. There's no photograph of the band even. I want to see what they look like. I haven't got a photograph of the band. They're too cool, aren't they, Mars Volta? Mars Volta are the Black Midi of then, aren't they? I've got the CD here. I can't say any much more about it. I will report back. But you can see I've got an open mind because I put it on the list. I've assumed, I'll put it quite high. I'll put it better than Question Mark by Neil Morse. Right, because I have heard it. And I know it should. I know. I thought I can't, we got this video, we got this YouTube channel here, all progressive rock fans or fusion. The progressive rock fans will be shouting, going, you don't like new music. You've gone back to 2000, well, that's 20 years ago. You still can't find a progressive fan. And they'll be shouting, what about, Goblins from Venus, that album that you never mentioned? Why haven't you mentioned them? Or I don't know, Frodo's Necklace. All these prog albums. I went into the prog archives, they're stuck in 2005, and there was like hundreds of these albums. Things like Smacchiaccio or something like that from Italy. Who the hell's this? Tears of the Tears of Christ. Batfinger. All these. I want to go. What the who's else? These are. I'm making these up, by the way. Don't go. Well, these sound like good. I love this stuff. This sounds. Andy's coming up with a whole bunch of new modern. I mean, modern is 20 years ago. This video is turning into a rant, isn't it? I've been really serious on the other ones. And why am I turning to a rant? Because I don't know what I'm talking about. I do not know what I'm talking about. This is the big question. The elephant in the room is why can I only come up with 7 albums? What is wrong with 2005? Why? I just looked at all the lists. What is it? Me? Or is it the albums? I don't know. Should we just get on with the next one? The next one, number 4, we have Life Begins by Jimmy Chamberlin. An absolutely incredible album, which is a cross between sort of Smashing Pumpkins, grunge, and jazz rock. And I love it. And Jimmy Chamberlin is one of the greatest drummers of all time. I love him. Billy Collins style drummer. Big drums. He's a phenomenal drummer. Now, the copy I have was given to me by Jimmy Chamberlin because in 2005 I did a clinic tour of the UK with Kenny Ranoff, and at the beginning of that tour I did Drumfest in Birmingham alongside Jimmy Chamberlin, and then at the end of the week I did Drumfest in London with Jimmy Chamberlin. So when I saw Jimmy again, we sort of hello, and I was yeah, it's your Jimmy Chamberlin. We'd gone out for a meal, you see. And I bonded with Jimmy Chamberlin. I told this story on another video where I was chatting about Terry Bozzio, because Terry Bozzio headlined the London Drum Festival. And I remember I was there, Jimmy Chamberlin was there, Bill Bruford was there with me, and I'd met Bruford, that was the second time, so now we were being a bit friendly. It was amazing. But Terry Bozzio was off doing his own thing, and I said to Kenny Ranoff, who I'd now chummed up with, can you get us to talk to Terry? So we went into the dressing room, being a proper drum star and like me. I said, Terry, do you want to chat to Jimmy Chamberlin and have this other bloke from Birmingham tag along? He said, yeah, send him in. And I went into met Terry Bozzio. Me and Jimmy Chamberlin were just like overawed by the fact we mean Terry Bozzio. And I was really quite surprised. I thought, Jimmy Chamberlin's overawed by Terry Bozzio. Of course he's going to be, isn't it? And then chatting to Jimmy Chamberlin, he was telling me how much he liked fusion, and he gave me a copy of this album, and it's absolutely incredible. It's incredible. He just flies. This was so rare at the time. There's an abandon there, and it's without all this sort of quantization and nailing and trying to go for perfection. They fly on it. They literally fly. It's a brilliant album, absolutely brilliant. I think they did an album afterwards, and that's great. But this was the one for me, was Life Begins by Jimmy Chamberlin, whatever it was called. I can't remember the name of the band is. But it reminds me of that week doing that, which was just magical. I was in the middle of the drum world. I was hanging out with all these drummers. We were having famous drummers coming to watch us play, I was up in front. I can remember, I'm not going to tell you about these, because the thing for me, the thing of that week that was incredible was when we arrived with this huge, I was doing a drum clinic, but we're talking 2,000 people. You're doing a drum clinic to 2,000 people. On the bill is me, I'm opening up. Jimmy Chamberlin's there. The guy from Cradle Filth, Adrian Ellison's playing. Greg Bissonet's there. Thomas Lang's there. Terry Bozzio. I think I've got the whole lot there. And Russell Gilbrook was on as well. The great Russell Gilbrook, who is my mate, appeared on the channel. He's played with Uri here. An incredible drummer. Russell is an incredible drummer. Incredible hands. Brilliant hands. Anyway, Terry Bozzio was headlining. And of course, he's playing this huge big drum kit that's taken like a day to set up. So when we arrived, they're setting it up. And they're bringing all our gear, they're setting up. So I've got to set my kit up while they're still setting up Terry Bozzio. So my kit's huge. I've got 2 double bass drums, everything. But within half an hour, my techs are all up. And I'm sound checking. and they're putting on the thing, and I'm first on, so I'm getting the last sound check. But Terry's done. And so Terry walks out, and they're also trying to sound check Terry's whilst they're sound checking mine. So Terry now sits on the drum kit. I'm sat on my drum kit, and I'm doing the sound check basic rock beat. And Terry starts to play with me. He has to. He has to. And he can't play the groove because he's got the Terry Bozo drum. He can play everything on it except for a rock beat. So he starts to play this melody over the toms, and I pick it up and I start to sort of jam with him. And I'm thinking, am I jamming with Terry Bozo? Is this classed as jamming now? Am I jamming with one of my drum heroes right now on stage? And there's all these people watching. The audience were in, but there's still 100 people, all the crew and all the drum people. Bill Bruford's there watching it. I'm jamming with Terry Bozo, and he's playing this thing on the kit, and it's like this solo. He's playing over the top. And I'm thinking, I know what this is. How can I know what it is? A drum, so how can I know what it is? And then I thought, oh my God, he's playing some of the melodies from Bitch's Brew on his kit. And at that point, I realised that me sitting there doing my sort of faux Steve Gadd funky beat and him playing bloody Wayne Shorter melodies on his kit was the difference between me and Terry Bozo. But it is a magical moment. It was a magical moment for me. And I was there, Jimmy Chain was there, and that's what it's got to do with this album. Nothing to do. But this video is going to go all over the place. I've kept it tight on the other ones. This one's going to go all over the place because I've got less things to talk about, and I want to get to the juice of it. The point is here, 2005 was a very important year for me, right? Because after playing with Robert, I was in no man's land, and then I start to get my act together. And one of the things I'd said to myself, I thought, I want to play in a decent band that does decent gigs, but where I get to play. I don't want to be backing up songwriters and doing functional drumming. I want to be able to play on time signature. And the audition came up with IQ, and I'd auditioned for IQ exactly at the same time, and I'd got the gig. So then I thought, well, I'd better go and check up on the modern prog scene. And I checked up, as I said, Neil Morse. I bought an album by him, and I bought an album by Porcupine Tree. Everyone was going, you've got to check out Porcupine Tree, you've got to check them out. So I went out and bought their new album that just come out, Deadwing. Now, on that album, there was guest appearances by Adrian Belew. I think Alex Lyson's on there. This album's incredible. And this was the album that made me go, oh my God, progressive rock's actually quite good now. It's not all Marillion and all the stuff I thought it would be. The Deadwing album was like, oh my God. And then once I joined IQ and we were out playing, going to prog festivals, because at this point in time, Porcupine Tree were on the ascendancy, but they hadn't reached the heady heights at that point. They were seen as being sort of a newer band that had come out. And in talking to a lot of the older bands, because I'm hanging out and I'm playing with the guys from Pendragon, from Palace, I know I'm doing all these sessions, all this type of stuff. And in talking to these guys, I see that people don't quite know what to make of Porcupine Tree. They don't know quite what to make about it. Stephen Wilson's up there singing, and it seems like it's indie-fied, and it's got it tracks back to sort of 80s pop like Japan and electronica stuff like that. Very interesting, the dynamic that was going on, and I'm putting it on and going, bloody hell, this is amazing. And it's got Gavin Harrison on drums, who I knew because Gavin in the 1980s had written for Rhythm magazine and had written this series of drum things called Rhythmic Illusions that had really profoundly influenced me as a drummer. So I arrived in the prog thing thinking, I'm going to do time signatures in a different way. I'm not going to do all Neil Peart like that. I'm going to do all these rhythmic illusions that Gavin... Oh my God, Gavin's doing it too. Here he is. Oh my God, and he's amazing. So this is the thing that was in. And of all the prog albums, I went through a lot of prog albums in 2005 that had come out in at that time. Deadwing was the album. It really was for me. It was Deadwing that just blew me away. And of course then, meeting up with Jem and John Mitchell and then going into Frost, and Frost trying to do something new with the genre, which Jem did absolutely did with Milliontown. And then getting, like people like Mike Portnoy and Dream Theater becoming fans of what we'd done on that album, which is really Jem, not me. But seeing that there was this new thing in progressive rock, which is much tighter production, much more modern production, moving away from all the Mellotrons and L's and all that type of stuff. Porcupine Tree were doing that. We were trying to do that with Frost. And now when you look at the sort of surface of progressive rock 20 years later, which is very interesting, you could see that that thing has become part of the sound. I played a very, very small part of it, not much really, but I was in it and I was around it. Very interesting. At the same time as this was happening, what I'd left behind, which was my friend Tim in our house music band and doing all that, he had then gone on to have a hit record that had gone across the whole world, and that was the background. And I'm sat there thinking, should I have stayed there and gone for the commercial thing, or should I sit tight here in the progressive rock world? The thing that I, in the end, got out of progressive rock for, I could not take the use of Pro Tools to just buff everything up and make it not sound human, and take out the feel and take out the dynamics and take out my personality and everything I worked at. And I found that really difficult to deal with. I mean, this is the thing I think that's coming out here, is that in 2005, Pro Tools really emerges, I'd say 2000 is when it starts to become ubiquitous. By 2005, it's there. By 2006, we do the Frost album, it's been used liberally, and I'm talking not just editing stuff, I'm on about replacements of sounds, virtual amps, the use of samples, and auto-tune. All those things together are moving music to something else. Progressive rock being a sort of perfectionist style of music, and all the people who do it being anal retentive and liking everything to have be in its right place. Progressive rock just sucked this up, and also progressive rock, the budgets weren't there. And so suddenly you now got people making, stuff in their bedroom with virtual amps, virtual drum kits. And you start to see this all happening. And me being me, I'm like, oh, it's not right. It's not right. But it is the way it is, right? And I think that's what, when I heard Francis the Mute, that's what it sounded like to me. Now, the way they were editing drums and the stuff they were doing back in 2005, 20 years ago, is nowhere near what they're doing now. And in a funny way, all that editing has been able to do it so much better now that you actually hear it less in some cases, but it's overarching. A few years later, when I went in to do the Frequency album with IQ, that I was a band member of, I wasn't just like a sort of person that was just playing for someone else. And I went in to record Frequency, the track, and I did all my takes, and they were all pleased, and we were really pleased with the take. And then as I walked out to make myself a cheese sandwich, they just start quantizing it. And I said, what are you doing that for? And they go, well, we just do it to all drums. Well, even if they're in time, yeah, we just do it just to make sure. And I was like, stop. It's like, and the thing is now we're here, musicians have got no work, there's no session work, there's no bands. Everyone's shot themselves in the foot. Now I didn't expect to talk about this on this video. I haven't even got through this list. At number 2, I've got Aerial by Kate Bush. Incredible album. And this was a big thing that happened when this album came out. We wait for Kate Bush album. What would have been the one before that? Sensual World in 1991, 1990. So he'd gone 15 years. She did a few more albums after, but this is a big wait. Then she comes out with a double album, and it's like a prog album. There's like a whole season, like an hour-long sequence of tracks on the second disc. It's really, she's got Peter Erskine on there, but that was a big deal for me because I love Peter Erskine. It was an incredible album. A slight letdown because no one could live up to that. The thing I found with Aerial that was a little bit of a letdown, again, was the production. I've been used to hearing Kate Bush recorded on like tape with all that warmth, and then this just sounded a little bit drier and a little bit more clinical. I think this is the overall thing, but incredible album. At number 1, I've got The Way Up by Pat Metheny, which is this again, that was Pat Metheny's response to all the downloading that was going on at the time, and the fact that people were just downloading one track and they were listening to bite-sized bits. So he decides to try and battle against this, like King Canute trying to stop the waves coming in, and makes this track called The Way Up, which is an hour and 10 minute through composed piece that they learned, so they went out and played live. And it was a really incredible thing. And when that happened, it was like the Pat Metheny group had gone up to another level of virtuosity, and we all bought this open mouth. But looking back again that now, even though it's such a big event in 2005, it's 20 years ago, it's incredible. I don't go back to that album like I do go back to, Still Life Talking or, Off Ramp or you know, Imaginary Day or Quartet or any of the albums that I love. This is another thing, because even me finding the 7 that I really do like, what I don't like about it is the production. I don't like modern production. Now, yeah, of course, I was doing stuff then. I was listening to stuff because I was buying these albums because I was working in progressive rock. So what's Mike Portnoy do? What's Gavin Downston do? So that's part of it. I'm not long just a kid now, just buying stuff I like. Now, if we forward to 2015, just 10 years ago, that if I say the year 2015, there's a couple of things, because my dislike of what was going on in the progressive rock world, plus a whole bunch of personal problems, led for me in 2009 giving it all up. And not just giving it up, but in 2009, I went into hiding. I actually disappeared off the face of the earth. I destroyed my phone. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have the internet. You couldn't get hold of me. I got a job and I went to work and had that job. I had a computer at work, so I had my work's email. That was the only way you could get me. I got rid of TV, so I couldn't see what was going on. I didn't listen to the news. I'd got my kids, they were little, and I just put my head down, did that. I stopped drumming completely. I wasn't drumming, I wasn't playing. And the guy that got me back in was Rob Reed, who coaxed me back in. And by 2015, I was back in it, and I was working with Rob on a whole bunch of progressive rocks, and I was slowly edging my way back in. And it wasn't quite going like it had, 10 years before, right? So I'm coming back into it. The 2 albums that I did listen to over and over again from 2000, from 10 years ago, was Hand Cannot Erase by Steven Wilson. Again, that was like, I went back to prog and started playing prog again because of, really because of Steven Wilson, because of the Raven that refused to sing in this album. And hearing that, I thought, oh, you can do really good stuff in prog, and I love this. And then I heard Pale Communion by Opeth, and I went, yeah, you can do stuff like this. And also, especially with Raven, with Alan Parsons producing it, I didn't feel like Marco's drums had either been quantized or edited or buffed up through the mix to sounding unreal. It sounded like a real drum kit. The bass drum wasn't like taking the head off like some, Mike Tyson thumping a suitcase. It didn't have that sound. It just sounded like a bass drum. And that really inspired me. The other album I've got on here, I got number 1, I put from 2015, is To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar. That was me sort of going, if you really want to hear a progressive rock album, check that out, because that's progressive rock, not the stuff that everyone's doing. And I was coming back into it. I had a band called Kiyama, and in 2015, I remember we'd done the album the year before, and we were shooting the videos in March. And whilst that was going on, my dad, who'd been such an influence on me growing up, he'd been a drummer in the 1950s. He was a guy who listened to jazz. He'd mentored me. He'd also dug me out of the problems I'd had 10 years before when my career was on on the rocks by saying you need to approach this like a business and showing me how the business works, explaining that to me. My dad developed cancer in 2014, and he died in April, 7th of April 2015. So this year I'm coming up from 10 years since my dad died. And it's funny doing this, you know, I started 5 days ago in 1965. I wasn't born then. So this here encapsulates my life at certain points in time. And if I go back 10 years, that's the day my dad died, and that's the day I had to grow up. Really, because I think that's what happens when your parents die, right? And I can remember trying to get those videos done and having kids. That's why there's only 2 albums there. I wasn't listening to music. And by 2015, I've returned back to music, and I've returned back to music for a reason. And the reason is because I wasn't earning enough money at work, and I had to supplement my income. That was why I returned to it. And I was throwing everything at everything. I was teaching drums, I was doing covers gigs, and I was doing the prog stuff, because the prog stuff may not have made me a ton of money, but at least it gave me a profile of being a proper drummer doing some proper stuff, rather than some local guy just trying to get scrap around for local drum lessons. And that was my thinking at the time. What was interesting that year, my dad died, I decided I'd set up a band camp, and all I had the band camp was to shovel over my old solo albums that had been out, you know, a few years before, and unreleased albums and a few things I'd got. So I did that. And then when my dad died, the way I dealt with it was I had to make some music. So the first thing I did is I went back into the studio and I made an album called Mike. My dad was called Mike Edwards. And it was just me playing quite scrappily, really, because I decided I'm not going to mix this. I'm not going to do anything except just plug the guitar and the bass in and the drums and overdub these jazz standards down, Giant Steps, you know, John McLaughlin track, something by Chico Hamilton, all the stuff that I liked and my dad liked and stuff we played with each other. And I made this album as therapy, really, as a tribute to my dad, and I thought I'll put that out on Bandcamp. But in doing that, I started to make my own music again. I'd set up a recording studio, and I enjoyed that. So then I made an album called Black Corridor. These are all at my Bandcamp, they're down below. And Black Corridor, inspired by The Way Up that had come out 10 years before, was one through composed track that was 30 minutes long, and I wanted it to deal with death. So the album that's a tribute to my dad is Mike. The album that actually deals with the experience aesthetically at that moment in time is Black Corridor. And Black Corridor is almost like tries to encapsulate a life and the things that it goes through. And this idea is as you go through it, the shadow of death emerges, and then you have to face death. Because I realized that when my dad died, when you see that happening, you look to your own death in a way. What has this got? This is not what I was going to talk about, but this is what is apparent here. So yeah, if you want to go check those out. Now I've just moved my Bandcamp over to a subscription, and there's like about 40 albums there. I've done a lot of recording, and I'll tell you why. Because in 2015, I needed some money, so I can remember sitting down. I hadn't been on the internet because I didn't have a mobile phone, but my wife had a mobile phone, and I got access to internet at work. So I decided to set up a YouTube channel, which I'd actually set up in 2014, and a Bandcamp. Those were set up in 2014, and they just sat there. And then in 2015, I thought, right, what am I going to do? And because I'd recorded these tribute albums to my dad, Mike, I thought I will pursue Bandcamp as a way of making a little bit of extra money. And I put everything into it. And the last 10 years, up into the YouTube channel, all my extra time was done creating albums for Bandcamp. And those albums are like the precursor to what I do here in a bizarre sort of way. I am getting to a point here, I can feel it forming in my head as we go, that I think will sort of explain what I see as this epoch. Because what are we looking at here? See, I've got all these things that we've just done over the last videos. I've got it on my laptop here. I'm looking at that, with all those albums, right? And what's really interesting here is the positioning of the timing. The fact that we got 65, 75, 85, 95, 2005, 2015, right? And I'm going to talk about this right at the end of the video of what that I think that actually means when we look back at what is ostensibly there, the era of rock. There it is, from birth to death. And the last entry is 2015, which is when my dad died, which is the most important person that I know that has died. And so everything since then is post my dad dying. And here, that's almost the beginning of this changing culture, which is now seeing Hollywood burn, as foretold by Public Enemy and John Lydon and a whole bunch of people, right? And so all the things start to come together. Now, I grabbed this hat this morning as I put it on because I knew that would have some ramifications in what I was going to talk about. My choice was Bandcamp back in 2015. And after banging my head and making 40 albums, I enjoyed it all and made a lot of albums and they did sell and I made a little bit of money out of it. I went, oh, sorry, I can't be doing that. I'm going to do YouTube instead. Now, I could have chosen back in 2015 to do YouTube. Whether I'd got it right, I don't know. And I've thought about this a lot. If I'd have chosen 2015 to do YouTube, where would I be now? But I didn't. Now, I partly didn't because I didn't understand it. Does anyone understand anything? Does anyone know what the future holds? And how can we really tell what's going to happen in the future by what happens that's happened before? Now, looking at this, what's interesting? Go back to 1965. 5 days ago, we discussed 55. This is the calm before the storm. If I was picking albums from 1966, there would be a ton of albums I could pick. Freak Out by Frank Zappa, the Pink Floyd's first album. I could pick like all the Beatles, that Revolver, and there's a whole bunch of albums that we can get into. And so often I was thinking, oh, that album's 65, they're looking at 66. But 65 was slim pickings, and the reason is because you feel like, looking at this list, that you get up to the end of the decade, and as the end of the decade comes, this new thing emerges and it's fresh. And it sort of happens as you spill into the next decade. And then at the beginning of that decade, it's all opulent and it's all happening, right? Now, in the 60s, it's actually jazz. Jazz moves up, the album's invented, and suddenly you've got 1959, you've got Kind of Blue, Mingus Art on, Time Out, you've got Ornette Coleman, and then Coltrane comes out, My Favourite Things, and then you get like free jazz, and the whole jazz thing is just spinning out, but then it's dying. By 75, it's on its last legs. It's dying. It's dying away, and we can see that because rock music's coming in, and we see the seeds of rock in albums like Here Come the Sonics, My Generation. This is what I put on the list. I could have put a Rolling Stones album on, maybe a Kinks album that happened before. We're going to get the Doors album coming up. So what we've got in 65, right in the middle of the decade, is the ending of that and the beginning of it. It's in this no man's land inside the decade. You think, well, that can't be. I mean, the years are just abstract numbers. It can't be the case. Go to 75, exactly the same thing again. Progressive rock and jazz fusion has ruled the world. It's just created this channel. It's created me. It's created all of you. It's all these incredible albums that we love. Mavish Ducks, Weather Report, Close to the Edge, all that. By 75, that is all again dying away. 76, 77, we're going to get punk. 76, 77, we're going to get disco. The whole thing's going to change. We're going to get post-punk, new wave. And by the time we get to the 1980s, you're going to have that arc, which then starts to fall apart in 1985, which is the calm before the storm of Public Enemy, house music, rap metal, grunge, electronica, jungle, indie. All this stuff's going to happen 1986, 87, 88, 89, 1990, and then by the time we get to 1995, the same thing's happening again, and we're at the back end of all those incredible music forms, awaiting the return of pop music, and that pop music ascends as digital technologies ascend, and the digital technologies grab a hold because they have their roots in dance music. And the one area that we all thought could never be touched by the machine, which is the visceral, the area of people going to nightclubs and dances and all that type of stuff, the thing that where you feel could be done by drum machines and computers. And the computer starts to get a hold. And what I look at this, what I see is me from being a child and then coming to fruition in 1985, me having I look back. I'm quite a conservative person, really. I'm not a forward thing. You know, when I was 14, I was going back 10 years and listening to the Mavish Orchestra Weather, but I wasn't listening to Duran Duran and Culture Club like my friends, right? I have always looked back all the way through this. So that's a thing of me. And as you get older, your life starts to kick in. And as your life kicks in, that also stops you being interested in new music. But at the same token, me being a musician and wanting to hear the groove and the soul, it starts to leach out. So I think my conclusion is that the reason why music seems different is A, because of my age, and it's the same with all of you. Your lives have got too much complexity around them. There's too much detail in them now. You can't focus on stuff. It's hard enough just to go back and listen to the stuff you do like without searching for stuff that's new. And then when you find it, the music isn't the same as it was before. It's changed. And what we see is the life and death of rock and roll. And I think I've done it. I think I am at the end of this video. I think that's the conclusion I've come up with, is that we have all gone along for the ride, haven't we? But what's interesting is this. Is within that is these cycles that you only become really aware of when you start to look at the fallow periods in between, which seem to go with the decades. It seems to go with the decades, because I know if I was even putting 2001, 2002, 2003, there'd be far more albums at that point that I'll be picking. Very interesting. Right, I need to go to the toilet, so I'm going to have to stop there. That's where I really need to go. So I'm going to finish up there. Thanks for watching this series of videos. I hope you enjoyed them. Please like them if you did. You can subscribe if you want to see some more. If you're, getting into what I do, go and join my Patreon. The link's down below. You can become a free member. If you want to give me a sort of financial sort of present, I've got my PayPal tip jar below. There's a little button there. You can go over to my Bandcamp if you want. I'm moving all the albums over to subscription. So if you just become a subscriber, you get the whole lot. And you can explore some of the stuff I was talking about. And I have a Substack, and there's free and paid membership on that. I really need to go to the toilet. So the fifth one I'm going to have to go. See you on the next video.